PayPal launches a USD stablecoin on Ethereum, and the SEC delays a decision on one of the Bitcoin spot ETFs. We discuss all this right now in the Collective Shift Weekly Recap. Actionable insights into a breakdown into the crypto market, all in under 30 minutes. As always, we'll start with a market update, followed by PayPal's stablecoin news. So onto the market update. Sounding like a broken record, but once again, we were flat over the past 7 days. At the time recording, Bitcoin is at 29,350, up about 1% for the past 7 days. Ethereum or Ether is at about 1,850, which is up about 1.0% as well for the past 7 days. And most of the major altcoins are basically flat as well over the past period. So, much the same story as we've had in this middle part of the year. So winter down here in Australia or up in summer in the Northern Hemisphere has been very, very quiet, low volatility, low trading volumes. A quick update on just the macro front. Last week was quite one of the more active weeks in recent memory. Of course, US inflation through the CPI came out, the latest reading of that, and it came out at about 3.2% over the course of 12 months. So the average prices have increased by 3.2% over the past 12 months, which was slightly below expectations. And the core CPI, so that's just CPI, and you take out things like food and energy costs, that rose by about 4.7%, also slightly below estimates. Both of those metrics were up by about 0.2% on the month. So that story that's been happening all the past, particularly this year, really, has been just decreasing, I suppose, deflation, really, a slowing of inflation, still above where the Federal Reserve would like it in the US. However, very positive news in that sense. Obviously, taking a US-centric view, this tells one story. Always important to consider other major economies as well. So Europe, of course, a very, very big economy when you combine all the countries. Inflation is still very elevated there. The UK, of course, we know that their inflation rate has been hovering between 8 and 12% for quite a while now. And then, of course, even in Australia here, the inflation rate is still well above where the RBA would be wanting it. So still that story of inflation, just not as severe as what it was earlier in the year. A quick update finally from the macro front is that more talk really I've noticed, particularly in August so far, about China, of course, the second largest economy in the world. They are continuing to see shrinking prices, as a matter of fact, year over year. That has started to really create fears about what the future holds for the Chinese economy, because as we've talked about many times, it can be hard to sort of reinvigorate economy when it is experiencing negative price growth. So that is something that has caught a lot of headlines. Talk about sort of monetary and fiscal stimulus into the Chinese economy, and there's been a lot of talk about is that impact of that net sort of stimulus, is that sort of offsetting what the US is doing with sort of selling off its balance sheet, its assets on its balance sheet, which of course those two sort of measures going against each other. So that's been in the conversation a lot. I know a lot of the central banks are meeting in later in August, I believe, and that will probably be quite a big discussion. But until then, we don't have an interest rate update from the US until later in September. I think September 20. So I think from the macro side, things will be rather quiet in the coming weeks as well. So on the crypto front, Nick, it's been flat as a tack, really. So I think we will move on though. I think there has been quite big news, very notable news. I think you could argue, I think I would argue as well, some of the most significant news of 2023 so far. So what have you got on your plate there?
This one is PayPal finally launched their stablecoin, which I know me and you were following quite closely, and especially considering that they had come out and stopped it for a while there due to the regulatory concerns. So very excited to see these news finally come to the market and finally release it, because it's been a long time coming and a lot of rumors about the PayPal stablecoin. So this one, it came out that it's fully redeemable for US dollars, and it's known as PYUSD. So it's backed by USD deposits, and it's issued with Paxos, and it's also backed by US Treasuries and sort of cash equivalents. So Paxos is the one that's going to be issuing this stablecoin, and they're going to be publishing their monthly audited reports. So similar to USDC, who provide a lot of transparency into what's backing it, we're going to get those monthly assurances by Paxos. So a massive one, and I think some of the biggest news is that Ethereum is the first network in which it is launching on, and the contract you can actually view on Ethereum right now, which is really awesome to see when you go into the Block Explorer and you can see big name like PayPal has minted and created a contract with it on Ethereum. So I think this is really big for a lot of ways, Matt. But I'm not sure if you're just as excited for me to finally see it happen.
Yeah, for sure, Nick. I think the biggest aspect of this personally was, after quite a brutal 18 months for the industry, and we've seen time and time again just bad news after bad news, and on the other side as well, when there was going to be positive news, you saw a lot of companies sort of undo those announcements or cancel their plans or cancel their Web3 teams that they were sort of starting to hire for. It's been very welcome to see PayPal, as you said. I think in February they were one of those many companies who came out and justifiably so, in my opinion, sort of put their plans on ice while there was a lot of uncertainty regarding their stablecoin. So it was quite surprising to see 6 months later them already coming out and actually launching it. And yeah, as you said, it's like on the actual public Ethereum mainnet or the Ethereum blockchain itself, where, as you said, we can see the address and see how much activity is sort of going on. So is there any other sort of reasons you can point to, Nick, about just why this is such a big deal?
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head with the first one, which was, they're finally comfortable with the regulatory landscape to actually go forward with this, which is, I think, me and you were very looking closely, just because we're very concerned about a lot of these firms exiting the market amid a lot of this uncertainty. I know NASDAQ custody was one of the victims that cited the regulatory uncertainty, but probably the two other massive deals, I think, of why it's such an important thing in the market is, number one, it's a massive signal for the legitimacy to the space. It's hard to forget that PayPal have about 420, I think, million users. They've also got Venmo, which is sort of a smaller player in the industry and often forgot about, but they also have millions of active users and a lot of value that is transferred through them. And it's just their strong brand reputation in the market. So they're just such an early payments pioneer. Back in the 90s, they were the first names to create a digital
Mm.
wallet. So it's kind of an interesting aspect that we think of where we are in 2023, that PayPal finally come out with their PayPal coin. They're increasingly getting involved in the space, from not only allowing people to buy cryptocurrency, but then to go on ahead and let them transfer out of their app into self-held wallets. I know they were on Bankless talking about the future of PayPal in crypto. So this isn't a sort of a one-off, and it's really them doubling down and showing that there is a lot of legitimacy on the space, and a reason why I think these public companies are launching products on public utilities like Ethereum. So big win for the blockchains and just brand wins and real sign of legitimacy. The other one I think is an interesting one that's perhaps less talked about is the idea that why PayPal is doing it in the first place. So I heard a lot of really good talk about actually using their stablecoin as a way to bypass, I guess, Visa and MasterCard's duopoly over a lot of the merchant payments and a lot of the value that it
Mm.
flows through their networks. So this is a big win, I think, for PayPal, that are getting involved with their own stablecoin, that they'll be able to perhaps bypass some of these traditional actors and go straight to the source and settle a lot of things on public roadworks like Ethereum, if that's how you can think
Mm.
about it. So it's a lot of will there be more to come as well? I'm expecting a significant shakeup in the amount of stablecoins that are entering the market. We even saw USDC and their CEO Jeremy Lear. He come out and said that um, Circle is coming out, as not just a stablecoin player, but building Web3 infrastructure. So they kind of see that the jig may be up on a dominant to the market with more, issuers coming in and offering, but even perhaps um, there's going to be a lot of competition because they don't pass on these rates, and that's why how USDC has made a lot of money. So that perhaps they're anticipating they need to build more infrastructure and more services, like what sort of Coinbase does as a front end. So really excited, and I think this is a big deal for the industry, and hopefully we can see more stablecoins come to market in the next year or so, especially if we get greater clarity in the US.
Yeah, definitely. I think the stablecoin, it's a very lucrative space at the moment with the high interest rates. And, for those unaware, us all listening to this, if we're using these stablecoin issuers, we're basically, very simple terms, sort of giving them US dollars or Australian dollars, maybe in the future. And then they're using that money to put it into cash equivalents like money market funds or US treasuries. And then they are earning that their source of revenue, or a major source of it, is the interest rate from those. And of course, we've seen, I think Circle last week came out and said the first half of 2023, the calendar year, they earned more revenue than the entire 2022 calendar year, mainly due to this increase in interest rates and that ability to earn more revenue. And we've covered Tether quite a bit this year as well, saying how successful they are going at the moment in terms of their business operations and the amount of revenue they are earning. Of course, for crypto investors, I think stablecoins also then allow people to sort of go easily in and out of positions rather than having to have that clunky sort of user experience going in and out of banks, which of course can eat away at fees as well. So yeah, it's been a really interesting space to watch. The overall takeaway, I also think, is just simply put, the more stablecoins grow in terms of just the pie getting bigger of stablecoins, the more, I suppose, ability there is for, I suppose, users, apps to be developed, and just a more seamless sort of, as I said, going back and forth between different apps, and just sort of grows the total addressable market, if you will, of just crypto, quote unquote, crypto, quote unquote, crypto users in general. So it's definitely, a positive thing. And with such a legitimate player, as you said, Nick, like PayPal coming into the space, very, very promising. So looking forward to seeing those monthly attestations to see just how their adoption is going. I think just in closing, they did sort of announce they're going to start it off as just sort of being an internal use case for US residents who are using PayPal, being able to send it between each other. But then I think they said they're going to open that up, quite those guardrails off, and sort of expand it. So probably not a rush of adoption straight away, but nonetheless, like, very surprising, very positive sort of development.
Mm.
Okay, we do have here in the past weeks some more notable updates here. The SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission in the US, two relevant sort of bit of updates here. We've talked a lot recently about the ETF applications. A lot of course, we already have a Bitcoin futures ETF in the US. We've talked a lot about why that is not enough, or why that could be done better. Bitcoin spot ETFs, of course, would be the holy grail. And we saw last week the first sort of deadline that we had talked about recently. That date has hit. And before that, the SEC, as expected, just kicked the can down the road onto their next available deadline. So we do have, I think 7 Bitcoin ETF applications that are coming up for their deadlines in the first few days of September. So we should see, obviously we will see a decision either on those days or maybe soon, shortly before those deadline dates.
Just to
That
add
would
in
be
as well there, Matt, I
particularly,
know
yeah,
they had I think Ethereum futures ETFs that potentially also being considered by the SEC. So it sounds like the next couple months is as heavy as always, and I think
yeah.
I think we're talking about the SEC more than we ever thought we would.
Definitely. Absolutely. So hopefully some progress there, but nonetheless, there's a lot coming out of it. And just the second of those two updates as well that we think you should know about is, of course, the very much covered and much discussed Ripple versus sort of SEC ruling that came out not too long ago. It was very seen very positively. It was a sort of split decision that mostly went in favor of Ripple Labs. The SEC is sort of as expected. Many sort of were expecting this, at least from what I could see, that the SEC was going to appeal that decision. They haven't formally done it yet, but there was news last week that they're very likely to do so, and the appeal is said to sort of primarily be focused on, of course, the previous ruling that we did see about in the last month or two. They deemed that, of course, Ripple Labs, the XRP token, so Ripple's sort of sale of that through publicly accessible exchanges, known as sort of programmatic sales, rather unique sort of sale that was quite unique in a sense to Ripple Labs. The judge there deems that those were not sort of investment contracts and therefore not securities. So I had seen some crypto lawyers discussing the potential for the SEC to appeal this particular aspect of it, and it looks like that's sort of materializing, and that is going to be the case. So probably if that does happen, Nick, probably who knows how long that'll take for a decision there. But as always, just good to see the discussion progress happening on figuring all this stuff out. But as we always say, the sort of overview, stepping back, the biggest sort of discussion in all of this is what happens on the legislative sort of standpoint. So these things can be influential towards that, of course, but definitely any updates with Congress and their sort of how they're processing crypto bills and discussing them is the most important.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there, Matt. And for anyone listening as well, I think there's two bills as well that are trying to make their way through the US to try and give the market more clarity. So I think as soon as there's significant developments with those, that's something that we'll definitely keep updated on, because it's some of the most pressing, I think, bits of legislation to ever hit, the crypto market. So once that does happen, hopefully we have more clarity, and I think hopefully a lot of this can become more clear, and what I think may be a kickstart to the market if that does happen.
Yeah, potentially so. All right, let's talk about one of, well, the entities that's actually sort of in this discussion a lot when we're talking about the SEC, and that, of course, is Coinbase, the largest publicly listed company out there in the crypto industry. They've had a very, very active 2023 to date. And of course, Nick, last week they opened up the gates to their layer 2 solution known as Base. Could you just sort of cover in general just how did that all go, and what sort of is the status of that?
Yeah, so it kicked off with finally the public being able to bridge and interact on this network. And it kicked off with what's called On-Chain Summer. So it's a month-long sort of a festival of on-chain activity with different brands, creating different NFTs, different mints, and different activities for people to engage with on the Base chain. So this has resulted in quite a lot of activity. I'm seeing about 90,000 ETH has been bridged over. Total value locked has actually increased dramatically to 200 million, and making it the fifth largest of these Ethereum-like networks in terms
Wow.
of value. So it's really shot up there immediately. I don't think it's going to be too long until it could potentially even vie for Optimism or Arbitrum as the number one or two. So as Matt's showing you, there's tons of different utilities, different songs, and just different community building exercises that are going on at the moment in the space. So if you are someone who wants to be interested and get involved, we can provide the links, in the description below. But a lot of activity going on Base at the moment, and be really interesting to see even more of these dApps that are launching, because that was a big takeaway for me, is that looks like everybody wants to be associated with Base. We're seeing browsers, wanting to align themselves. We're seeing the biggest dApps such as Uniswap immediately port over and provide their support for their swapping. So a lot going on with Base, and I think it's easy to sort of forget about that. It's quite a unique thing, being the biggest public company in the US that is embracing creating their own cryptocurrency network that's tied to Ethereum. So I would have really thought we'd see something as pronounced like this so fast, but they've really come out the gates firing, and I think they would have been working on this for quite a while. So yeah, really keen to see how they keep going. And don't know about you, Matt, but I'm really positive with this direction that they're looking like they're kind of merging from just becoming a centralized exchange to, becoming a sort of a de facto front end for Web3. So that's the direction that they're going in, and I'll really like to see if there's other exchanges that are going to follow suit.
Yeah, I think you're right, Nick. I think Coinbase clearly understands that if this industry and market is going to, grow to the levels that, everyone working in the industry thinks it's going to, I think Coinbase understands that their centralized exchange will have to become a very sort of just a portion of their overall business. If it turns out that they're just still offering an exchange in a decade's time, it's probably an argument there that the crypto has not succeeded, quote unquote. I think it's gone pretty successfully so far. I think I expected, and you did as well, just a sort of a wave of initial capital and interest. I'd be very interested to see where we are, call it in 3 or 4 weeks' time. Maybe after that sort of on-chain summer initiative sort of ends, I'd be interested to see how that user retention sort of is going. But very promising so far. And for anyone sort of interested in not really understanding like why this even matters or the significance of it, I would sort of encourage you to even go on that on-chain summer website that we are linking to, that we will link to below, because it really is sort of a reflection of the sort of the cutting edge or what is possible today in the quote unquote crypto space in terms of just your everyday apps and sort of doing it in a way that is as seamless as a user experience as possible. Now, I know Coinbase, even the CEO, has acknowledged that they have already noted a lot of sort of pain points for users, and therefore, I suppose this pushing of this product so quickly than what we expected, Nick, is sort of again is accelerating the development of that user experience. That's another sort of side benefit of this release of Base. But yeah, for anyone interested, it's sort of a great showcase of what's possible today and sort of how far we have come, yes, but sort of how much further we have to go in terms of UX. So, no, it will be looked back on. I'm very confident in saying this when we do look back on 2023. And I know you agree on this, Nick, that the launch of Base will be like one of the highlights of the year. So, no, very, very encouraging stuff so far. We will just wrap up there on the last sort of relevant piece of news just quickly, and is that the Federal Reserve last week, so the US central bank, they did start a new program to oversee crypto activity with regards to sort of their member banks, so well, any sort of US bank. So it's sort of just the continuation of sort of the Federal Reserve's sort of stance on stable coins and crypto, and sort of more formalizing it through this new program. So nothing materially sort of new here or shocking, but I suppose the significance of it really is just that crypto remains very much in the focus of the US Federal Reserve, even in this sort of quieter period, which again, to me at least, makes me somewhat confident that this space is maturing, and that we may see some more sort of comprehensive legislation sooner than what probably I would have expected, call it a year ago. Onto just the things we are looking forward to for the week ahead. I would definitely say, again, just reiterating that on-chain summer. Check it out, have a play around. Ask any questions, of course, in the Collective Shift Discord, or reach out to us on Twitter or X if you're having some trouble. We'll be sure to point you in the right direction. Another sort of date I would expect, again, early September. So we might do 1 or 2 sort of weekly updates in the meantime, but there is always that chance with regards to the Bitcoin ETFs. Those applications, there may be some news on them in the coming 7 days or so. As I sort of touched on, the short term, like it or not, ETFs are going to be dominating the headlines because of how important that sort of spot ETF potential approval is to the market. Nick, I know for the overappreciated sort of aspect of things, or underappreciated, for the past 7 days. We've got some good ones this week. I'll hand it over to you to kick us off.
Yeah, my one for this week is probably the overappreciated news of Aptos and their Microsoft announcement. Uh, Mainly because, being in the industry, I do notice these announcements quite a lot, where blockchain companies will partner with big names such as maybe it's Amazon Web Services or it's Microsoft, and it sort of appears like it's a really positive partnership, and it often moves the market. So in this case, the Microsoft announcement, I think saw Aptos and the APT token increase about 15% on the news, which is a very sizable gain in the market. But upon reading the sort of report, it's kind of unclear exactly how proprietary that sort of partnership is or how market moving it really is if you really dig deeper. So just diving into it, although the partnership is significant because Aptos is, I think, lending some of their blockchain data to Microsoft to train a lot of their products and services. In return, I think Aptos is getting some possible favorable deals or the like. So when you really dig deeper into it, it's not something that's incredibly market moving or even really that important, I guess, to the APT token. But these news can often be, I guess, blown out the water and misconstrued as, it's an endorsement from Microsoft on Aptos, when really a lot of these announcements can simply be that Aptos is using Microsoft infrastructure, or in other cases, other blockchains may be using Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Cloud Services, which isn't necessarily an endorsement on the cryptocurrency itself and a strict partnership. So this is what just some of the confusion I see in the market a lot. So just want to call out some sort of confusion, because no doubt we'll see more of these being released, and you'll see as the bull market potentially could come back, an increase of these type of announcements with newer cryptocurrencies partnering with big names where it's kind of unclear about how those relationships go.
Yeah, very well said, Nick. I think if that does happen in the future, if you're wanting clarity about any of these announcements, my advice would be go to the respective communities of these projects, and any sound project, you should be able to have some sort of contact point with a representative of a given project, just to ask them some simple questions. And if detail isn't forthcoming, personally, it's up to you, but personally, I would say that's a bit of a red flag based on my experience. But yeah, I would always suggest sort of trying to get more details when it is sort of vague, hazy language, as you sort of pointed out, Nick. So yeah, it's a great one there. And hopefully these Aptos and Microsoft, something does come out from this. But yeah, I definitely agree with you, Nick, that in and of itself, currently we cannot really read into it too much at all. So that was a good one there. I've got one here just in terms of, I suppose, underappreciated, more just a shout out to sort of a third party tool that I did come across last week. I'll get it up on my screen here. We talk a lot about L2 Beats on the research team. I don't know if Leon did a video of it last year. I've started to continue to use L2 Beat, of course. But I've also, started to use this new website that I found called growthepie.xyz, which we will link to as well below. I know that they also have, quite a few, data points on layer 2 usage. And of course, I think it's just healthy, right, to have different sort of inputs of sort of analytics and different data sets when you are assessing, how well a given sort of network is going. So of course they've got base there and whatnot. I don't really know anyone on the team or whatnot, but I just thought I'd come across it, and I'm always impressed by the development of tools in this space, even in sort of a quieter period. So that was a nice find, I think, that I'll continue to use over there at growthepie.xyz. But we will wrap it up there. So if you are looking for more insights, do see our revamped weekly shift newsletter, providing free weekly market insights every Friday. Subscribe at collectiveshift.io/newsletter. That's collectiveshift.io/newsletter.